Hey everybody, Mike Naso here with the latest on the tropics on this Monday night. It's about 11 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday, August 21st. In late August, things are typically active in the Atlantic tropics, and they are tonight. Looking over the entire map of the United States and the Caribbean, the Atlantic, there's the moisture from Hillary still pumping into the western U.S. It's subsiding, but there was flooding in California. Nothing to mess around with. It was a nasty impact there on the Baja. We have our system in the Gulf of Mexico that is not yet a tropical storm, but it's getting close, and that satellite tells me it should become a tropical storm overnight and impact Texas on Tuesday. And we have our tropical storm here in the eastern Caribbean. This is Franklin, not looking too hot. That tropical depression that was dying out there that I mentioned was not going to get a name yesterday ended up getting a name. It became Tropical Storm Gert because it's been bursting, even though it's getting sheared apart by the outflow of Franklin, but we got another name out of it, Gert. Emily has dissipated, but it could come back maybe as it moves into the northern Atlantic, and we have a tropical wave off Africa with a high chance for development over the next few days. So we're going to talk about all these features. Let's get straight to Tropical Depression 9 in the Gulf of Mexico. As of 10 p.m. Central, that's 11 p.m. Eastern. Tropical Depression 9 was at 25.7 north, 93.3 west, winds of 35 miles per hour, moving west-northwest at 18. Now that's important because, number one, Texas needs some rainfall. They've had drought conditions in many areas there of Texas. They need the rain, and the faster it moves, the less it'll rain on them. So you don't want flooding, but at the same time, you want some kind of relief. Secondly, the faster it moves, the more quickly it's inland and it doesn't have a chance to strengthen, certainly not into a hurricane, which it could have become a hurricane if it had more time. I don't think it'll have enough time, but I've seen crazier things happen. We do have a tropical storm warning from the mouth of the Rio Grande all the way up to Port O'Connor, Texas, and then a tropical storm watch over to Sargent, Texas, and we'll have tropical storm conditions with rough surf and gusty winds and swells impacting the coastline of Texas. Here's the infrared satellite imagery of our tropical depression, and notice right in here, convection starting to increase. See how it's kind of consolidating closer to the center? That means that this system is probably going to become a tropical storm, if not at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, probably by 5 a.m., and then strengthen into landfall. It does have that kind of bend back to the west look to it, so normally underneath the ridging, it starts to get the outflow established. The waters are very warm. The only real inhibitor is that it doesn't have an inner core right now, and until it gets that, it can't strengthen quickly. Other than that, land interaction. If this thing was organizing like this, moving slower, and was all the way over here, oh, we'd be dealing with a hurricane or even a dangerous hurricane. Thankfully, this won't have a lot of time over water to strengthen, but it's going to bring an impact to Texas. There are the computer models, again, straightforward. It looks like it's going to make landfall in Texas, although northern Mexico can't be ruled out. Probably somewhere in the vicinity of Padre Island, it'll come ashore and bring along wet weather. Here's the radar out of South Texas, and there it is right there. I hate all these warnings and the layout. God, when I was a teenager, we had radar on a map. We didn't have all this extra crap. There's a better image. It's a little further away, but my God, all the other stuff was just a bunch of junk. Warnings and surf warnings, and I don't need to see all that. This is what I need to see, the radar image of the storm developing over the Gulf, and you can't really see a well-defined center yet, but you'll see that consolidate and then come on shore sometime on Tuesday, probably Tuesday afternoon, as a tropical storm. But again, if it cranks up overnight very quickly and then strengthens throughout the afternoon, we could see it approach a higher intensity than what is currently forecast, which is about 45 to 50 miles an hour. So it could become a high-end tropical storm. There's always a chance it could become a hurricane, but right now I think it just doesn't have enough time. If it did, though, look at these hot waters over the Gulf. The water temperature is not a problem. It's just the amount of time it has over water, plus where it's at. Over here in the western Gulf, not quite as hot as south of the Mississippi, Alabama, Florida coastline there. Then we go further out, and here's Franklin. And Franklin is not looking too hot tonight. Franklin's at 14.5 north, 70.2 west, winds of 50. It's moving north-northwest at 5 miles per hour. very, very slowly, and it looks like the center might be trying to readjust a little to the northeast. So this track may eventually have to be shifted more to the right. They already shifted it to the right at 11. It looks like by Wednesday, it will be making landfall over the Dominican Republic, and that's why we have a tropical storm warning out. And we have tropical storm watches there for areas of the Turks and Caicos Islands and the north coast of the Dominican Republic because the tropical storm conditions could impact those areas. But again, it's not looking too hot. This is a very weird track. In El Nino years, you get weird stuff going on. This is the type of track we'd see in November, not in August. In August, this thing would be moving west-northwest throughout the Caribbean, this kind of northward and then out to sea, and that is more of a late season type of track. Now, the reason Franklin's having so many problems is because of this wind shear. On the map, it has just this horrible wind shear ripping it apart, and that's also impacting our tropical depression Gert here to the east of Franklin. We'll talk about Gert in a second. But just, this is El Nino. When we talk about unfavorable, this wind shear in late August, this right here, is the El Nino wind shear. This is very unfavorable, and it is really slicing everything to shreds. We saw Emily die. We saw Gert die. We're seeing Franklin die, all because of this. Thank God for it, because if not, we'd be having hurricanes roaring across the Atlantic. And Franklin for sure would be a strong hurricane here in the Caribbean Sea. It looks like as it moves north, it'll have a little bit better environment towards areas there south and east of Bermuda, but we'll have to wait and see. In contrast, our system here in the Gulf has more of a favorable pattern over the top of it, and that's why it's able to strengthen more, even though it's going to run out of time. Here's the infrared satellite imagery of Tropical Storm Franklin, north of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, and it's bursting, but the actual center is trying to reform maybe a little to the east. Sometimes if there's a mid-level center, it'll reform closer. The low-level center will dissipate. It does not look good. See this flat line that I just drew? See that? That is very unfavorable. But this convection is keeping it alive, and it is still going to bring rainfall and flood threats to areas of the greater Antilles. Again, the computer models, some of them here, the Canadian, want to bring it more west and then north, but either way, I mean, just a complete brick wall that it runs into here to where it ain't going to get west of 75. And so if you're in the Abaco Islands, Cuba, southeast Florida, watch it, of course, but I think you guys are good anywhere to the left of that line. So Bermuda, after the areas there of Puerto Rico and the Dominican, Bermuda would have to keep an eye on it right now. It looks like it's going to move over land and then kind of get steered by a mid-level ridge and eventually move on out. But again, still going to have to deal with Franklin. Gert we're not going to have to deal with, although it looked like it was going to die off on Sunday, and then on Monday it becomes a tropical storm. It's at 17.1 north, 58.4 west. Gert is a depression moving west-northwest at 9, and it should dissipate in the face of wind shear from Tropical Storm Franklin. Look at, same thing as Franklin. The reason it has tropical storm and depression winds is because it's bursting. It's trying. It wants to be a hurricane. It's August. This is, it's trying to be a hurricane for the Virgin Islands. It's just not going to happen. This wind shear is too strong, and the center of Gert is exposed that Gert is naked. Gert is naked. Off Africa, we have this invest area that is, we're going to watch this because oh, by the way, here's Emily. I forgot to mention Emily is, actually, that's not Emily. Emily is right here. What is left of Emily's thunderstorms to the north, we could potentially see regeneration as it moves away, but right now Emily's dead. This wave, though, is one that we're going to watch as it moves towards the west-northwest, although I got to tell you, this wind shear here that blew apart Emily is going to take aim at our system there. There's another good wave waiting to leave Africa. This is the wave I've been curious about, because I knew that our Emily was going to peter out. I knew that Gert wasn't going to make it. I knew Franklin was going to move out. I knew this wave might get a little further west, but eventually probably turn. But this one here leaving Africa, some of the long-range models have shown that this might make it further west. So we'll see if this is more of a threat down the road or if that doesn't do anything at all. The models for the wave currently that has left Africa show pretty much a west-northwest track, but again, some of them hinting that that too will eventually turn. So very good news. The long-range ensemble models that Normally, this is the European ensembles. They show where systems will go. Franklin obviously is going to move north, although Bermuda needs to watch it. Some of them show something here coming out of the Caribbean towards the Gulf sometime around the 31st of August, so about 10 days or so. And then they obviously show another wave leaving Africa headed west. So, for all we know, we'll have a system come up towards the United States and a system come down towards the Caribbean by Labor Day. So, keep an eye on the tropics because it's not going to be just what we're dealing with now. The GFS ensemble is also hinting at more systems off Africa. But again, we're going to watch all these storms. Right now, the focus should really be on Texas because you guys are going to get hit with a tropical storm tomorrow, a landfall of what will likely be a tropical storm. And by the way, because the Measley system in the Atlantic stole the name Gert, if this does become a tropical storm, it will be named Harold. And Harold was the replacement name after 6 years ago in the year 2017, Harvey devastated Texas as a Category 4 hurricane in late August. If this does become Harold, it will not be like Harvey, thankfully. I'm Mike Nasel with the latest on the tropics. I'll be back with more next time.